I'm so excited today to introduce my audience to my friend, Tracy Malone. Tracy is an author and coach and the founder of narcissistabusesupport.com. Tracy is a thriver, my favorite word, that has taken her lemons and made lemonade for the world to share. She is the author of the upcoming fabulous book, Divorcing Your Narcissist, You Can't Make This Shit Up. Tracy, I am so happy you're here, and I'm so grateful that you've agreed to be on the Divorce Doctor podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored.
Oh, thank you. So your work, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is all, came out of your divorce experience. And I like to ask people to start a podcast, what's the one word you would use to describe your divorce?
Gosh, one word. It'd be like a dictionary. Could we just have a whole dictionary?
I know it's hard to get one.
But traumatizing, I would say, was a good word. Yeah.
Thank you for that honesty. Yeah. And we'll talk about what was traumatizing about it. Why did that word pop into your mind right away, do you think?
Well, I quickly regurgitated all of the things and went, I could go this way, I can go that way, I can go that way. I mean, unbelievable, epic would be one word. The judge called it the most tortured divorce in our town's history at the close of the divorce. And
wow.
I just didn't understand what was going on at the time. I didn't know what a narcissist was. I didn't know what I was dealing with. I just knew we had 7 trials and all these false allegations. And I'm like, what did I do? And I don't understand.
Wow. And I think what's really interesting is that what you just said, which is, what did I do? Right. That there was this asking yourself, what did I do wrong?
Right. Exactly.
Right. So I'd like to explain to people that it takes time, right? I mean, you're talking about not even realizing about the narcissistic behavior until later on, but it takes time to decide, between when you decide that you're going to separate and really divorce. So when did you, Tracy, start kind of hearing the little birdie in your ear telling you something might not be right?
I actually was so sucked into the illusion of what I thought our marriage was that I held on to the story that we never even fought. I saw weird flags, I saw weird behaviors, but as far as I was concerned, we were going along just fine. And the reason I found out about it was because he called me on the telephone and told me he wanted a divorce.
So it was him who asked for it, initiated it. And how soon after that did you, I think, kind of allow yourself to see what was going on for you? How long did that take?
It was actually about 3 years after my divorce when I learned what narcissism was, what I learned. So I had no explanations and nothing to look up. Surprised that my lawyer never just said, hey, look this up, but they're not going to diagnose, so they're not going to lead you that rabbit hole.
Right.
So, it made no sense until I dated somebody that boom, I found out and saw it in him. Someone said he's gaslighting you, look it up. Then that might explain my whole divorce, my entire life. It got unfolded after that.
Wow. So Tracy, your story, it feels like there's so much loneliness in it because you didn't know for so long, even though they called it the hardest, torturous one of the county. You didn't know that you were being tortured.
Oh, I knew I was being tortured.
Oh, you did?
I didn't know by whom. I mean, these, and I say these because it was more than divorcing my husband. His family was very much a part of it. They were very wealthy and they lawyers in New York. I'm in Colorado. They had lawyers here. They had lawyers and paperwork coming from Delaware. I mean, a very coordinated campaign to take everything I had and leave me with nothing. And just all these false allegations just kept coming at rapid fire. We had 7 trials.
Wow. And before he called you up, was there any campaign against you? Was he often kind of barraging you with, attacks?
No, in fact, the reason he called was because he had just gotten a job on the other side of the country. And he was in Colorado for my son's high school graduation that weekend, left on Monday. Everything was normal. Romantic dinners, all the graduation parties, all the stuff we had to do. Everything was normal. House was on the market. I was going to move there. And then we had picked out houses to look at over the week he was there for my son's graduation. Like, we're going to look at these 10 on Saturday because I'm moving there. The house is being sold. I'm moving. And so it all seemed like it was in order. So he called and just said, yep, I think I'm done. And I was like, what do you mean? Don't we have an appointment with the realtors? Like, why didn't we just make love last night? I'm confused here.
Right.
Very, very, very confusing.
Right. That's probably a really great word, right? To describe what it's like to be married and divorcing a narcissist. Confusion, right?
And a covert at that, because he had that charming persona. Everybody knew it. I believed the lie, and I just didn't see it coming.
Yeah.
No expression of we're having trouble. Let's talk to someone. Like, just nothing. It was, it was just what he did. And
so for you, it really felt, again, like you had made love the night before, you were having this celebrate, like everything was fine, and then boom, right away.
absolutely.
And so you must have just been rattled with confusion, as you said, and going back over things. Was that really torturous?
It was horrific. Again, I'm in the middle of packing a house because we're move, and suddenly I'm doing this all alone, but now my house is packed, and where am I going to move? I thought I was moving to Connecticut. What am I going to do? It was just such a blind side. And then, just, oh my God, I've got to get an apartment. And I went apartment shopping, crying in and out of these apartments, and just be like, I was a wreck. I definitely had PTSD, and I definitely wanted to kill myself, and actually held a box cutter to my wrist, and thought about, this is it. I don't want to do it. But I called the hotline, and they talked me through and said, where's your son? What will he do when he finds you? Oh, good point. Hadn't thought of that detail. So I stopped, but I was so distraught. Obviously, I started therapy and got help. But even that therapist, after 4 years of doing therapy with me, never said the word narcissism.
Wow. So were you really the identified patient? Like, were you the, hysterical woman in the story to the lawyers, to the...
At first, I think I was. I was more the lost girl. I was
the lost girl.
So depressed, and I didn't understand. I was like in a fog, as we've often said.
Yeah.
Just like, where am I? Is this my life? Because I'm supposed to be moving on Saturday. What's going on? It was so hard.
Yeah. And I'm so honored that you're willing to share about the suicidal thoughts, because I know, Tracy, that you are not alone in that feeling of desperation is real. And especially when you feel like your entire life has been pulled out from you. And that you mentioned the PTSD. I mean, it sounds like you were walking, as you said, in a fog, very much like a dissociated state.
Absolutely. It was just that blindsidedness just knocked me off my game. Shaking, and my son was just about, because he just graduated high school, he was leaving for college, and I was like, now I'm really an empty nester. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Where am I going to live?
Right.
Too much. It was just too much.
Too much to bear. Yeah. And it's making me think, in my book, I talk about really thinking about, what you had thought your life was going to be. Like, this is such a perfect example of, you could like even imagine yourself looking at those houses and now thinking, wait, I'm supposed to be looking at houses. I'm not even supposed to be here. This is not supposed to be happening. And I think so many people in the audience can relate to that. I know I had that feeling too of, wait, this isn't supposed to be happening.
Yeah.
Right.
It was just a blindsided, attack after attack, and then just why? What did I do? Like I said before.
Right. And that's so painful, is that idea of like, oh my God, what did I do? And so how did you suddenly, or you said you went out with this person, how did you start healing? Tell me about your healing process.
My healing started after I learned about this from the other dude. I mean, I was definitely, over the divorce. Divorce took about 1.5 years. It was not a short term. And false allegations, just it was just a nightmare.
Did
So
you
I
have to switch lawyers, or were you able to stay with the same
had
lawyer?
the same lawyers. I loved them.
Mm.
We were, and I'll give you these numbers just because people have to understand.
Yeah.
I have no shame about it. It's just a fact. We were fighting over $50,000, and I just wanted my 25, and my divorce cost me $100,000.
Yeah.
And fighting and fighting and false allegations. You stole money. And meanwhile, I created and put the 5,000-page books together, all collated with the
Right.
statements. And this is this. He never produced any paperwork. He was in contempt about 3 or 4 times.
Mm.
You just keep going up and going up.
Mm.
And, so I didn't learn during it.
Yeah.
So a lot of this healing kind of took place without knowing, again, through therapy, through a lot of, support. But when I learned about this other guy, like that totally imploded my life.
Wow. What did that guy show you that made push you to the narcissism? What was the trait?
Well, I found out he was cheating. We'd been together for 2.5 years. Found
Oh.
out he was cheating. I said, thank you, goodbye, go away. I didn't know what hoovering was, but he kept on coming back. Let me explain why I slept with the only other girl at Christmas dinner.
Mm.
Then about 3 months later, I decided after a church sermon on forgiveness to go and forgive him, because our mutual friends that had introduced us said, you know what? I don't know who to invite to our party next week because you guys are so weird. So I said, well, we don't have to be weird. I'll just go forgive him. No big deal.
Mm.
So I marched over to his house to forgive him. He calls the police and has me put in jail. That's how I learned. 24 hours later, out of jail, someone said he's gaslighting you. Look it up.
Mm.
And that particular day was the worst day of my life, but it was also the best day because I would have never done the work to go, not only him, and then husband and family. It was like, oh my God, my mother, my sisters, my life imploded over that year after the arrest, to the point of, of course, watching YouTubes endlessly, listening to podcasts and reading books and therapy and gaslighting courses and whatever I could suck in the knowledge I did. And so, that was sort of the journey. But if it was not for him and his stupidity, I probably would have just forgiven him and gone on and chosen another jerk.
Right. And I'm so curious, Tracy, because you've done all this work and you work with so many people who are coming out of these relationships as well. What did you notice your behavior was when you were with a narcissist versus now when you're healthy and healed?
I would say I was just so naive. I
Mm.
understand. I had confusion when he would do things.
Yeah.
One of them, I would be like, well, that's really weird. But then they had the explanations. And I was so trusting, such a people pleaser. I had no boundaries. Back, those were the things that made me a very good piece of mark bait, because she's going to do it all. She'll take care of my kids. She'll do this, she'll do that, and so for me now, I have such strong boundaries, and, I take no prisoners, and I'm kind and loving, but I stand up for myself and my own rights. And that's the huge change in me for sure.
Wow. I have chills when you say that you stand up for yourself and your rights. Because I think about you didn't even know you weren't having your rights considered, right? Back then. And so do you have a better connection or a new connection to yourself and what you need and what you want? Did you develop that through the process too?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You have to find it. If you didn't know you had it, or you even had a choice, being raised by a narcissistic mom, as you know, being surrounded by it your whole life, it's normalized. Ghosting, I say, was our family vacation. So if boyfriend did it, if the passive aggressive ghosting and silent treatment was happening in the house, it was like just normal. Oh, they'll be back tomorrow, give them 2 days, I know what this is going to mean. I normalized it, and now I just look at it, and of course we go through the process of getting rid of other people in our life,
Right.
going, you know what, they were never there to support me, they can never listen to me, it's always about them, why do I keep them in my life?
Right.
Figuring that out is giving me this peace that I only surround myself with people that are good-hearted people.
Mhm. Yeah. And what do you say to people, Tracy? I know I hear this a lot of, well, maybe they'll change, or maybe the person, it's just our relationship. And maybe if they did, like, what do you say to that when your clients are?
Well, they can't change. They obviously, it's something that is not something they see wrong with them. In order to change, like I did, I had to look and go, oh my goodness, Tracy, look at what you have created with your life and the choices based on what you knew from your family. But like, I look at that and just say, no, we can change, but they can't. And that's how we heal, is to stop putting the onus on hoping they'll change, or maybe this will be better, or wait, it was a really good weekend, or they took me to dinner and it was lovely, but they're going to go right back. That's the love bombing. Even if it's just a ping of something kind, they're not going to ever change.
I think that's such an important message. Something I've been working on a lot with clients is looking for people who are consistent. I think whenever you say, well, maybe they'll come back, or the ghosting, right? That really, to be in a healthy relationship, we need general consistency. I mean, we're all going to have different moods, but if it feels like a roller coaster, you're on a roller coaster.
Exactly. And
Right.
learning things like learning how to set boundaries, how to speak up and have the voice to do that. Because it's one thing to read it in a book. Now you've got to practice it. It's a whole
Yeah.
nother. uh,
Yeah.
and again, people ask, well, how do you set a boundary with a narcissist? They don't ever listen. And I'm like, no, they won't. So you have to set boundaries before you end up with the narcissist to
Mhm.
protect yourself from letting these kinds of people in your life. Yes, if you're still living with them, you have to find ways to work together. And that might be setting boundaries, but with a narcissist, they just don't generally like it very much.
Right, right. I think that's also, I want to give a lot of compassion to people that if you haven't been setting a boundary with a narcissist, that's because it hasn't worked. And so the boundary really is setting it for you and knowing that that's your true boundary. And if someone can't meet that, then that's not okay for you. That's your protection. And I'm wondering, Tracy, with everything that you've learned and everyone that you've coached and that you've taught, what do you think is the thing that keeps people the most? Like, what's the piece that people have a really hard time accepting about their narcissistic partner?
That they weren't the person that they thought they were,
Yeah.
right? It's an illusion. It's a mask. It's a role in a play, if you would.
Mm.
And if we look really hard and we're absolutely honest with ourselves, that good person, oh yeah, he was so wonderful. He did this, he did that. When you were out in public,
Mm.
not necessarily like all the time or consistently.
Mhm.
Just because they were great one day or bought you a bunch of roses doesn't mean that the other stuff is okay, right? We need someone who's consistent that we can trust. I had no trustometer. I really just
Mm.
I ask my clients now, how do you trust somebody? What's your criteria? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, yeah, this guy came from friends that introduced us, so I trusted him. I had no standard and no guideposts to
Mm.
say what you just did was like absolutely no integrity. And that's not okay. You have no accountability. You're not reliable. How can I trust you? I never put those pieces together. I
Right.
simply gave my trust. And that's something that I hold on to very closely now.
Yeah, I love that. And I also like the idea of having to gain your trust kind of every time, because I really resonate with this idea of, well, they were once that way, right? You talked about love bombing, that in the beginning of a relationship, especially with a narcissist, it's very different. And then a lot of people are just waiting for that person to come back, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's
Right.
like, no, 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 he's sometimes good, or she is. We have lots of females out there that are
Mhm.
narcissists, but you know, it's holding on to that illusion. And until you get honest and go, oh, we had this really wonderful trip to blank, be honest. Were they there for you?
Right.
Was it all about them? Did they stop you from doing the thing you wanted to do? Oh, I really want to go to whatever. And then when you get there, they're like, nah, I'm not in the mood. And you're like, but that's why we came to Barcelona,
Right.
and you're like, wait a minute. And so you sit there and you get really small with that confusion. You're sitting there going, wait, that's why we're here. And it hurts. So it's really about learning a lot of pieces of the recovery puzzle.
Yeah, and I think you need so much support, which is what's so great about your book because of the confusion. So when you are confused, needing other people to be your mirror, because this person who's narcissistic, that's where it comes from, is not able to be a mirror. And so you need other people around you like you. So Tracy, one thing I love to ask people, if you could go back, knowing everything you know now, to that call, let's say, when he said, actually, I'm out, you're not coming to Connecticut, what would you whisper in your ear?
I would be okay.
Mm,
That's what I needed to hear. I
yeah.
had so much fear. Fear kept me, in that PTSD, kept me from sleeping for months. I lost 4 sizes of clothing. I couldn't
Mm,
eat. My adrenals were failing.
mm,
I just didn't know that I'd be okay. And so, I had to rebuild. Don't think it was easy. I had to start all over. I lost everything. And so I just had to say, you know what? I'm going to work myself. At that point, I was 50 something years old, and I'd lost my retirement, and I'd lost everything, my savings, my home. And, it was such a burden. But getting through the other side I didn't see it
yeah.
because it was so scary in the battle zone
Yeah.
as I'm fighting one battle after another and defending myself, and just all of the things that happened. I never stopped, nor was there even that hope that I would be okay.
Yeah.
So until I figured that out and said, all right, well, I'm not going to be okay with that, but I can rebuild. And that's what I had to do. And I just put my pedal to the metal. And people like, how do you do it? I'm like, well, I work 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, and 8 on Sunday. you know
Right.
I'm like, that's what you do. You're building, and you're just going, you know what, it's a passion for me. And
Mhm.
helping others from all over the world is like the most magical gift that I think I got out of all this, because in my healing from not only the divorce, but all of the family stuff, I've learned that, I learned how to do it,
Yeah.
and sharing that wisdom with people and seeing them have that aha moment that they'll be okay is
Yeah.
such a powerful gift that I wish someone had given me when I was in that spot.
Yeah, such a great message, that you will be okay, and what you needed so much. And I just want to say, as a therapist, that I think while you couldn't hear that voice, it was there, because that's the voice that got you to call the hotline. That's the voice that got you to stay alive. And so I and all your clients are so grateful that you listen to that voice and that you're here to teach and continue to guide people.
Thank you.
So, as we finish and wrap up, is there anything that you want to say to the audience, people who are at different stages of divorce, before we finish?
Well, I think if there's something else I learned was, and I needed to learn it, but I didn't learn it at the time, was to pick your battles. Again, that $100,000 battle was to, stands with fists. I'm going to tell you I didn't steal, instead of going, here's all the evidence. You tell me where I did. And they had no evidence, but I still was so, like, I wanted to defend myself. And we wasted lots of money that wouldn't have been lost had I just said, that's not a battle I need to fight. But when your honor is in place, when your children are in the mix, you feel like you need to fight with all your might. So you fight for your children, you fight for your life, but you also listen to your lawyers and go, I know that all of these letters from the people he's cheating with really should be out there. I see your point, but if we do that, do you really want to spend $10,000 to try to run that down?
Right.
I wouldn't have allowed the lawyer to do as much of that.
Yeah.
And I would have been in a much better position. But that was, hindsight is.
Of course, of course. And I think what's really one thing I want to say about that battle is, if you feel compelled to fight that war, I would ask people to question, is this about today's war, or is it my pain from the war of the relationship? And if it is that only internal healing is going to get you there. Only working through books like yours and mine is going to get you there. Not winning in court. So many people hope that the judge, is going to make them feel better. We know from our good friend Tina Swinton's work that does not happen. That is not how the court system is set up. And so I love this advice of really think about the war, think about the battle, and think about yourself. Again, this is what it's so hard to do, but think about yourself in 10 years from now.
Yeah.
How could you have used that $100,000?
No,
Right.
where would your life be if you didn't fight, but
Right.
again, also listening to the lawyers saying things that, oh, don't worry, he'll pay the lawyer bill.
Right.
I was so, okay, that's why they would run it up and they would say, oh no, he's making so much more, he'll pay it.
Yeah.
So I have to be really mindful and learn the hard way.
Yeah.
That the judge makes that choice. It's not based on the fact that he makes more money.
Right. Right. I remember in my case, my lawyer kept insisting we should have a private investigator follow him because he would show up to court in all these really nice suits. And so she assumed he had more money, which I knew from living with him as a narcissist that he didn't, but it mattered what he looked like. And I remember the day I said, no, we're not going to do that. And while I felt like I was letting her down with my codependency because I didn't want to, make her unhappy, it was a turning point for me. It was I'm putting down the sword. Like we're moving along. So I just want you to know that you can have both. And so thank you for bringing that up. That's such an important point, Tracy. And thank you for your vulnerability and your honesty and for the work that you do.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a pleasure. I love your book.
Oh, thank you so much. I can't wait to get my hands on yours. And Tracy, let people know how they can find the book and find out more information about you. Of course, we'll have it in the show notes, but also let the audience know.
Sure. So we've got a website out there, divorcingyournarcissistbook.com, but you can also start to find the details on my narcissistabusesupport.com website.
Great. Thank you so much, Tracy, again, for being here and for everything that you do.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.